Hello, my name is Reese Cassiaran Brennan, and this is going to be my coursework demo for 3D Graphics Programming 1. So, if I just run the code, so what we have here is we have the console window and we have the actual game window. So basically what we do is we control the player in the bottom left of the little grid there, and we use the WASD keys. So if we use the WASD keys, it moves us up, the D key moves us right, S key moves us down, and the A key moves us left. So we have a few collisions that we've done in this game. One of them is the whole perimeter of the grid, so the walls and the height and the bottom of it. So if we go ahead and crash into a wall there, we can see that on the actual console window here to the left, it does say that we've hit the wall and that we've lost a score of 10, putting us in -10 score. So basically every wall you hit will then lower your score by 10. We have the squares here, so these are detailed here by the little purple colors. So if we go ahead and crash into those, it resets the position again. It says we've hit the square here on the left side of the screen, and it also gets rid of 10 score again, so we're on -20 score. So now what we want to do, the third collision that we have, is the actual end gate, so the one that transitions us into a new level and resets the square objects, making it look like a new level there. So if we just go ahead and make it over there, so as you can see in the left side of the screen here where the console is, it says we've hit the gate and we now have a score of 30, so we've increased our score by 30 every time that we hit the end gate. So those are all the collisions. If we hit the right click button on the mouse, we have a little pop-up window here that says grid on and grid off. So basically what I can do here is every time I right click, I can decide if I want to turn a grid on, so that's what it looks like with the grid on, and then I can right click again and I can press the grid off, which then takes the grid off. So it's a sort of little grid on function, so it toggles it on and off if I want to. So that is pretty much the game. So if we close this down, so the code, so here at the top right here we have our globals. So the globals are used to call throughout the code. So if I want to reference something like square size, grid size, these are all constant values, so the constant ones don't change, whereas the non-constants obviously do change. Next we have the reshape function, which is this one here. So what this one does is it controls how the window is viewed. So for example, if the window is stretched, all the rendered objects in the window are adjusted in size to keep in line with the window's aspect ratio. So if I just run that again, so as you can see here, if I stretch the window inwards, it keeps the same size of the game and all the objects, but it adjusts it to what the screen size is, so it doesn't tear it. So if I was to extremely stretch it, then it would all be stretched and it wouldn't look great. So that is the reshape function. Next we have the add square. So the add square, what this does is it creates the square obstacles that you see in the game. So the little purple squares that we have there. So basically what it's doing is it's putting values on it, and it's essentially creating it, but it's not displaying it yet. So the next function we have is the draw square. So that's from before. So it basically takes the add square value and it then draws it on the screen, so we can see it and crash into it and then collide and then restart again and so on. So next we have the draw outline function. So this draws an outline for objects given. So in this case, later on in the code, I'll show you what has been given this function and it's what's contained, because it's in a display function. But this here creates outlines for given objects. Next we have the player wall collision. So this is one of the first collisions that I showed you. This is basically if the player goes out of the game scene, the player loses 10 points and then is reset back to the start. But obviously in this one it's just a collision, so it just deals with the collision aspect. So it will take 10 points, it will say in the console that you've hit the wall as well and display your score. Next we have the player gate collision. So This one is again another collision one. It says here that this one is for the gate. So what happens here? So at the end gate, what happens is when you collide with the end gate, it will then say in the console that you've hit the gate, display your score, which in this case is adding 30. And then next is the player collision. So in the player collision, what happens is if you collide with one of those square obstacles, it then displays in the console again that you've hit the square, and then displays your score as well. So those are my 3 collision aspects there. Next we have the draw grid. So this draw grid is to do with my toggle grid that I showed you before. So what happens here is it controls all the grid I have in the game, where it's like all the toggle variables and all that stuff. So it allows you to see the grid on screen when it is toggled. Next I have draw player. So draw player is very simple, it's just displaying the player on screen. Next I have my menu. So my menu, these are all the menu entries of my grid toggling options. So it toggles a boolean function which contains an if statement in my display function. So basically, essentially what that if statement will do is it will check, for example, if toggle grid is on. If toggle grid is on, then it displays the grid. If toggle grid is off, then it doesn't obviously display the grid. Next I have my keyboard. So this one is to do with my controlling. So as I've used WASD keys here, so the W key increases it, making it go up by 1. The S key makes it go down by 1, obviously because up and down, and then D and A are left and right. The R key is to rotate the object, which I didn't show you, so I'll show you that now. If I just move over here, and if I press the R key, you can see there that it rotates on X and Y degrees there. Next we have the init function. So this is basically initializing things. This here only runs, it only needs to run things that are only going to be run once. So for example, grid on, grid off, as you can see here, these things only need to be run once because they only be pressed once. Next I have the display function, which I was referencing to earlier. So for the outline ones, you can see here that I've done game exit, game entrance, and the walls. So it's basically defined there that it needs to outline outline a little thing for the objects of the wall, and then the end and the start gates there. Also, this runs everything that needs to run every frame. So as you can see here, all the collisions need to be run every frame. Outlines of the game objects as well that I just mentioned, and of course the player itself, for example. And then of course the last bit here is the main function. So the main function is used for, like, it's running all the glut functions and all of these functions here, as well as, like, well, these are glut functions, but this one here is to do with the name of the window. So if you go back here, you can see at the top here, so it's actually called car CW game, which is what I decided to name the window, which is here. So basically what it does is it just calls on all the functions and basically runs a program. So it's like in an order. And yeah, that is my coursework 1. Thank you.